Welcome to the Financial Coaches Podcast, where we talk about how to build your practice from startup to scale up while being the kind of coach your clients crave. Finally, a podcast for financial coaches. Here are your hosts, Maria Casillas and Cody Sizemore.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Financial Coaches Podcast. I'm Maria Casillas, joined here by my incredible co-host, Cody Sizemore. Last week, we started talking about some really interesting things. We were talking about specifically a client that I am bringing on board and talking about like the missing piece. Our discussion, though, got to be pretty interesting and almost a little too deep. And we decided to table it for today. So today we're actually going to jump back into that discussion. We want to just talk a little bit about how, like, what does it mean to be a really solid coach for the person who's looking for that missing piece, which, spoiler alert, all of them are. They're not coming to you for the numbers. They think they are, but they're not really. But how do you be that? What do we even call that? And I just want to tell you that here at New Money Habits, we have sort of coined the phrase budget coach. And then we talked about what would it be instead to be more of a transformational coach. And as we were talking last week, it kind of started going into the realm of that discussion. Would you agree with that, Cody?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's kind of why we wanted to wait, because I think that there's going to be so much that we can talk about with regard to those different things. And we just knew that we didn't want to throw it all at you last week. So here we are today. Before we jump into that, I just want to say thank you so much for listening, tuning in today. If this is your first week, please, we say this all the time, but this time we actually really mean it. Go back to last week so that you're not completely lost with today. But if you have been here with us for weeks on end, we really appreciate you as well. You're why we do this show, and we appreciate all of the feedback that you've been handing over to us. Without further ado, let's jump right into kind of being a transformational coach versus budget coach. And let's say first, Cody, that would you say that most financial coaches, when we first start out, really kind of land in that budget coach arena?
I would say that unless someone is like hyper aware and they have a ton of experience with the other side, then yeah, like 99% of us. Yes, for sure.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I agree. It's funny because I personally was hyper aware of the other side.
Mm-hmm.
And still,
There you go.
I'm going to explain why. I think part of it is because, and that was one of the things that I wrestled with personally. And so our longtime listeners know this about me, but our new ones might not. I wrestled personally with knowing like there's something more. I know I'm doing this with these clients. I'm getting results with these clients, but at my gut level, I'm just like, this isn't what I know to do. And I struggled with that, and then went back to what I knew to do. And then I saw transformation versus just budgeting. But I share that I knew it ahead of time, but because of my personal journey, I lost some of that because my personal journey was so flipping budget focused and numbers focused that that's what I thought everyone wanted and needed.
Mm-hmm.
But then I remembered that once we hit a certain milestone and we felt lackluster, we felt unfulfilled, I was like, okay, that's why, because we were focused so strongly on the numbers. And so it was probably a year-long transition for me to really be like comfortable going back to what I knew was right. But I just wanted to let you know that even though I was very aware of the other side, I still fell into that trap. So 99.9 might be a low estimate. I don't know.
might be 99.1, 0.2, 0.9, you know.
Oh, anyway,
Yeah.
the reality is, if you're listening to this, chances are you probably fell into the whole budget coach arena at some point. So you can relate to what we're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah. And like we were saying last week, you know, getting outside of that whole like budget coach arena and just only being focused on the numbers and the debts and the savings levels and the return on investments and all these good things. Getting beyond that, I feel is not only important for people to make as much progress as quickly as possible. That's one reason. But also, I think that there's two more reasons that are extremely important too. Number one is like you talked about, like the fulfillment side of things, and even just having like a better relationship with your money as a whole.
Mhm.
Um,
Mhm.
it's going to cause the quality of the journey to be higher versus just being so fixated on the destination all the time.
Yep.
Sometimes when we're so fixated on the destination, if even one thing goes not according to plan, then we tend to get very frustrated. We tend to throw our hands up, throw in the towel, and give up, kind of thing, you know? And that
Mhm.
creates temporary results as compared to permanent results. So that would
Mhm.
be one thing. But I also think that, like, it's also really important to figure this stuff out too, because, you know, sometimes it's about figuring out why people want to have these things in the first place. I talk to a lot of people, and one of the questions I ask in the consultations that I do are, um, what do you want to see happen with your money? And why do you want to see it happen? And I would say that like 90% of people will say something along the lines of this: I want to pay off my debt and build up my savings so I can prepare myself for retirement, or so I can just live comfortably. I'm not trying to be super rich. I just want to be comfortable. And it's like, okay, that's good. But what does that actually mean? What you told me is what you want to do and how you
Mhm.
want to accomplish it. But we don't really know why. Like, aside from just quote unquote being comfortable, and is being comfortable what you actually want as
Mhm. I
well?
was I was holding my tongue. Yes. That's what I'm curious about,
Yeah.
especially if they say it in that ho hum way that you just that you just
Yeah.
demonstrated. That certainly doesn't sound like they're excited about that. And, I mean, it's funny because some people might think that it's not okay to want to be super rich, etc.
Mhm.
And maybe that's not what they actually want. Maybe they do want to be comfortable, but is it because they don't believe they can be more than that now?
It's possible. I have found that a lot of people who do say that phrase of like, I'm not trying to be a millionaire,
Mhm,
it oftentimes is because they don't believe that they can be, kind of thing.
mhm,
Now, sometimes they just literally don't want to be because maybe they think that,
mhm.
millionaires are bad people or whatever it might be, which is a whole other issue.
Yep,
Um,
we can talk about that another time.
right. Uh, but yeah, it's important. And, you know, this kind of goes back to what we were talking about last week about how, like, you can have that really good budget plan. You could have that really good game plan to accomplish these goals and, everything like that. But at some point, maybe it's a monthly basis, maybe it's a few months into it kind of thing. There's two outcomes that I have found that happens to people if they're going after accomplishing goals simply for the fact of accomplishing the goal. So simply for the fact of just saying, hey, like, I paid off my debt or I built up my savings, kind of thing. Like, a lot of people just go after those things because they just want to accomplish that,
Mhm.
at least on the
They
forefront.
wanna prove it.
Is-
They wanna prove to
Right,
themselves they can.
right. The
Mhm,
surface level, right? So if you're going after these goals for the sake of, accomplishing surface level reasons, there's two outcomes that I have seen happen to people very, very often. And the first one would be this: they get really motivated and they get really excited at first, and they hit the ground running with like full steam ahead, and they're super excited to knock everything out. And then they do relatively well with it for a couple months, maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 months, something like that. And then something happens. Something. Now, this could be a car breakdown. It could be a job loss. It could be an unexpected medical event, but something happens that wasn't according to their plan, right? So when that happens, they kind of throw their hands up and they go, see, I knew that this was going to happen. Who was I kidding? Because
mhm,
every single time that I try and get this thing done, something always happens. So you know what? I don't even want to deal with this anymore. I don't want to look at it. I don't want to put time in it. I don't want to put energy or resources towards it. I just want to get away from this and I just want some relief. So then they stop. They fall off the wagon. They go back to what they were doing before. They get their little fix of, not being super intentional and being able to just be kind of like, loose with their money again. And they go out and they dopamine shop and all this kinds of stuff. And then they fall back into that place of discomfort until the next time that they get
Yep.
really motivated. And then the cycle repeats, right?
Mhm.
That's one thing that I found. The other outcome, though, would be that they get really motivated. They get really excited. They do really well with it for a couple months, 2, 3, 4, 5 months. And then maybe nothing happens. Maybe there's nothing wrong with the car. Maybe everything's good with the job. But it just becomes a little bit more real. It's not this exciting, new, shiny
Mhm.
thing anymore. The reality of the situation starts to hit. They start thinking about how much longer do I have to do this and how much longer do I have to sacrifice and all these different types of things. And slowly but surely, it just becomes a little bit more lackluster
Mundane.
and mundane. And slowly but
Mhm.
surely, those old habits start to creep back in. Slowly but
Mhm.
surely, those old mindsets start to creep back in. And then, thus, the old results start to creep back
Mhm.
in until one day they look up and they look at themselves in the mirror, they look at their partner, and they say, "What happened? Like, we were doing really well with this, and it just kinda, like, fizzled out. Like,
Mhm.
how why did that happen?" Right? And then they're left with confusion and maybe a little bit of shame and guilt around it, you know? And that's the 2 things that I've seen happen over and over and over,
Mhm.
and it creates this vicious cycle of just temporary progress met with frustration,
Mhm.
and that's the missing piece.
Mhm. So we started that beautiful soliloquy by by stating that it's when their desire, I don't remember what word you used, but it was surface.
Yes.
When what's that?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, what was the word? Do you remember?
Um,
It was when they're motivate not motivation, because I know you wouldn't have used that
yeah,
word.
it was really, like, just, like, the goal.
Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
the goal, the, like, surface
Um,
level, just them trying to accomplish a goal simply for the sake of accomplishing it, and that's it.
okay. All right.
Checking
Very good.
boxes.
Yeah, and that surface level. And so, since you did such a beautiful job of pointing that out, I would love if you would tell me, what does it look like when somebody has a deeper, more more personalized, and I don't know if sustainable is the right word, but reason for wanting to do what they're doing? What kind of outcomes do you see then?
Yeah, yeah. So, I think that that's kind of a multi-layered question.
All of mine are.
I know, I know, but, really what that kind of looks like is, like, just being able to peel back those layers and start asking the questions that need to be asked. Um,
Okay, so before you go there, what you're answering right now is, how do you tell the difference? How do you get them
yeah,
to a deeper layer? Before you get there, I'm curious to know what sorts of outcomes. So we're just comparing it to the outcomes that you just said before. Before they go 3, 4, 5 months, they either run into life and give up because for some reason they knew but didn't expect life to just happen every single 5 months, or they get really excited, turns lackluster, and they go back to their old habits. What I'm curious about is, what sorts of patterns do you see with the people who you've helped to dig deeper and
mhm,
get closer? And then we will go back to
okay,
figure out how
okay.
you get to there.
Yeah, so the patterns I see there is that once people figure this out, um, and if something were to come up to where, there is a low point in their journey or, it just becomes a little bit more boring kind of thing.
Mhm.
They have a reason as to why they're doing it that actually reignites that fire and that desire and that drive to get it done.
Uh-huh.
to actually accomplish the mission kind of thing. And it's
Mhm.
not for the sake of accomplishing, paying off the debt anymore. It's what paying off the debt brings to them and what that
Mhm.
actually means to them. So, in the process of doing that, you're taking away, you're shifting the focus from making the debt pay off be the main focus to instead what they actually want and what's
Mhm.
actually valuable to them. And when you do
Mhm.
that, then, this whole debt thing, it's just a piece to the puzzle versus,
Mhm.
the main character, if that makes sense.
Mhm. Yeah, 100%. And for the sake of people who maybe aren't working specifically around debt, I know many of our listeners are,
Mhm.
but there were, I don't remember how many episodes ago it was, and I'm not going to do a really great job of remembering all the details, but I know you're going to just jump right into what I'm talking about. You mentioned something um, about the destination and the timing, and you had, like, a little phrase around it that really sunk in, but obviously it didn't sunk in enough for me to remember it right now. But it was like, something about getting somewhere fast or being patiently, not patiently impatient, but is anything jumping out for you? No.
Aggressive
I could
patience.
Yes, yes. That's what's coming up for me right now
Mm-hmm.
when you talk about that. Um, Remind our listeners what aggressive patience means
Hmm.
in a few words.
Hmm. So essentially, aggressive patience is like the best of both worlds in the sense that when you look at things broadly, maybe what you want to accomplish, right? Um, that's the patient side of things, to where like you accept the fact that it is going to happen first and foremost. Which that's one thing that a lot of people struggle with is, can I even do this, right?
Yep.
So it's you just accept the fact that it is going to happen, and when it happens doesn't really matter. If it
Mhm.
happens in a year, great. If it happens in 5 years, great. If it happens in 10 years, great. It's just the fact it is going to happen. And that's
Mhm.
the patient
Yep.
side of things, right?
Yep.
And then the aggressive side of things is more of like the zeroed in short term kind of focus. And really what it comes down to is daily focus, right? And you just focus
Mhm.
on like, hey, I know that I have these big goals and I understand that it is going to be accomplished and it doesn't matter when, but on a daily basis, I'm going to do everything in my power to make today be a win, to move the needle just a little bit more towards
Mhm.
accomplishing that ultimate goal. What do I need to
Mhm.
do today? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, not next week, today, to consider it to be a win. And then the next day you do the same thing and the same thing and the same thing. So it's the best of both worlds in the sense that you're being very aggressive in the short term and very passive in the long term.
Mhm. So, thank you for that recap. And do you see why that came to mind while you were
Yeah.
talking?
Yep.
That's what it sounds like to me. So we can use the debt-free thing, but we can also apply this to any goal that somebody might have. But it's that idea that it's going to happen. And we recognize we'll get there eventually. And when you have that mentality about something, then the timeline isn't quite as important, but the reason for wanting to get there is important.
Correct.
And that's what you're seeing when you have somebody who is tethered to something that's much more important for them than just some random number or random, outcome. That's when they're like, okay, I can be aggressive even when the car breaks down, even when things get boring, for example. I can actually show up every single day and continue down this path, but because I don't need to worry about what is over there. I just wanna make sure that I get there eventually. And so that's kind of one of the things that I thought of when you were talking, and it just shows how beautifully all of this stuff really intertwines,
Mhm.
and it's not isolated. So
Yeah. 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 And, even with like, so a lot of what we're talking about is helping people find their why kind of thing, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
So I don't know. I mean, do you think it's worth like going in briefly? I know we talked about this on the show before, but it's been quite a while since we've really talked about like how do we actually craft that why or uh, anything like that. I mean, we can be We can talk about it briefly. We don't have to go
Yeah,
super into it,
we've
but
got some time. Sure. Let's do that a couple minutes.
okay. So, I mean, this is how I do it. Now, you might do it differently, but this is my process. But essentially, let's whatever goal someone's working on, you start with that as like an initial question. So, I work with people trying to get out of debt primarily. So, I'll just use that as an example. So it might be like, hey, so and so, why do you want to be debt free? And oftentimes they'll give you an answer of like, I just don't want to feel like I'm stressed out all the time about money or something like that, right? Like it's
Sure.
usually that surface level answer, right? And then you
Sure.
take their answer and you ask another question based off of that answer. So it might sound something like, okay, well, if you didn't have that stress around money, what would that really look like for you? What would a stress-free life around money or a stressless money life around money actually look like and feel like for you? And then they'll explain that and they'll say like, well, I'd be able to, feel like I can be more myself and not be so anxious all the time. Or, I might be able to be nicer to my kids or my spouse, or might be able to take that vacation, whatever. And then you take that answer and you ask another question and say, okay, so what would it mean to not only yourself, but also your family if you were to be able to show up as that best version of you, kind of thing? And you just keep digging and you keep
Hmm.
digging, right? And then with every answer that they give you, listen for like key words or key phrases that they're saying. And as you're taking notes, just like underline those things, right? To me, what those are like little pieces to a bigger puzzle. And then once you felt like you've asked enough questions and you have enough of those pieces to kind of make sense of what their heart is actually saying, you can then put those pieces together and kind of craft it into like one solid statement, um, to which then that might be their why kind of thing. So, even as an example, I mean, I could even just run you through what a why statement was for one of my clients.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Okay. So, the initial answer to her initial question, which was, why do you want to become debt free? And have a fully funded sleep well at night fund. She said, I just want to have the freedom to do what I want with my money and peace knowing that everything's going to be okay. That was her initial answer.
Initial.
And then as we
Okay.
started digging and peeling back those layers, I'm not going to go through everything, but essentially
Yeah.
this was what we found is like the ultimate why, right? And it sounds like this. So it says, it is my duty to myself and my family to capture the level of freedom and peace around money that I've always wanted. That way, I can prove to myself that I can persevere through challenges and reinvent myself and step into who I'm meant to be, someone who's confident, intentional, and present. And with this, I can invest myself into what's actually important to me. And I can undeniably know that I am a damn good mother and wife with nothing holding me back. That is so much more powerful than I just want to have the freedom to do what I want to do and know that everything's going to be okay.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Now, I'm curious to know, did you then help her craft a shortened version of that so that she could memorize it, have it stated somewhere, like say it, see it often?
Yeah. So I don't do that. I know that statement's a little bit longer, it's like 3 sentences, right? Um, but what I do tell people to do is to physically write these out and to hang
Mhm.
them up in their home somewhere that is, like,
Mhm.
severely in the way, like, they're forced to see it every single day,
Yep.
and I tell people, "Speak this out loud every
Mhm.
single day," for 2
Mhm.
reasons. Number 1, speaking something into existence consistently over and over and over, it just has a higher likelihood of happening, number 1.
Right.
And then number
Right.
2 is that, like, we don't know when, that low point in your journey is gonna happen? So, I want this to be burned into your brain. Like, you're gonna memorize it because you're speaking it every single day? And that way you can rely on this one as compared to the surface level when the going gets tough. Kinda
Yep. Yep. Yeah, no, all of those reasons are why I asked the question because I do believe that memorizing that and saying it often is going to really help solidify that. But since that one was a long one, I just was wondering
Mhm.
if there any friction there in saying that to herself every single day.
Yeah.
But there are some definite great pieces of that if she decided she wanted to shorten it, she absolutely could, and it would still be very, very powerful. Because what I see there, it was way more about, if you think about it, it was way more about relationship
Yep.
and and becoming who she was created to be.
Correct.
That has a lot more to do than just how I'm feeling in the moment. And here's the other thing too. When people say, I just want to not be stressed, I want to, I want to be able to sleep well, all that stuff. I'm going to sound like a downer, and I don't mean to do that. It's more of a realistic thing.
Yep. I already know what you're going to say.
You can say it for me.
No, I
So
want
you
you to
can
say
sound
it.
like the downer.
I'm not going to say your
Oh,
thunder.
sure. Let me be that one. But man, things are going to happen anyway. You're going to be stressed anyway. There's going to be, we can't avoid the human conditions
Yep.
that we have thrust upon us. And so we have to learn to be able to deal with anxiety, to deal with stress, to deal with discomfort. Like, that's one of the things we need to be able to deal with, because we're never going to be able to eliminate it. We can do certain things that help reduce it.
Mhm.
I mean, you know people, I'm sure, that are like in crisis mode all the time. And usually those are the people who bring that totally upon themselves, right? But there are people who, quote unquote, do everything right. And still there are going to be times of stress and anxiety. And it's because we don't live in a bubble. And so when they say that, I'm like, well, I can't help you with that. I don't really tell them that. But I think it's really important not to get down to the why just so that they can be more sustainably motivated,
Mhm.
but because then it helps them be a little bit more realistic about what they're actually after.
Yeah. Yep.
And then we can actually help them. You can help her become a better mom and somebody who's in great relationship with her children and with her spouse. And you can help her become the person that she's wanting to be through all of the stuff that you're doing. And you can help her be able to handle stress and to handle anxiety, but you're not going to be able to eliminate it
Yeah.
for her.
Yeah. Yeah. And like you said, like, you're never going to be able to escape stress or anxiety or whatever it might be. And that's a common misconception, is that, people think like, oh, if I just get out of this debt, if I just get that
Right.
house, if I just get that car, then everything will be good. Right. And I even
Mhm.
fall, victim to that
Yep.
sometimes myself as well.
Yep. Me
Um,
too.
but there's a saying out there, which, I'm not like the biggest fan of the saying, but it also rhymes, and I like rhyming things, and it has a nice little ring to it. And there's a lot of truth in it too. But the saying is, with every new level, there's a new devil,
Uh,
right?
uh-huh.
And basically what that means is like, it doesn't matter, how many benchmarks you clear,
That's right.
you're always going to have something new that's
Mhm.
going to stress you out. There's always
Yep.
going to be something new that's a new challenge to overcome. And that's so true. That's so
Mhm.
true.
Mhm.
So yeah, it's a
Yep.
big part of this. Um, there is one more thing that I think I would like to talk about, and then obviously if there's anything that you want to throw in too, I think that's good too. But so we talked a little bit about why, right, and help people find that. I also think that, like, putting a main emphasis on a person's relationship with their money is also very important as well. So what I mean by that is, like, how they view money, how they think about money, what they believe about money, how they behave with money. All of that goes into account of, like, what a person's relationship with money is. And
Mhm.
oftentimes, especially, if there's people coming to you with money problems or money issues or money frustrations, the root of it all usually lies within the relationship with money, right? Um, so I think that helping people dig into that and get some answers is extremely important, because that will oftentimes, at least what I've found, be one of the main drivers that actually makes the monthly budget or the game plan actually come to fruition. So, for example, if someone has a spending addiction for whatever reason, maybe you open up some conversations and you say, like, hey, tell me what this spending habit looks like. Like, do you spend on a specific thing quite a bit? a specific person quite a bit? Is it because you're feeling a certain way? So then you end up spending, or because you want to feel a certain way? Like, what does that actually look like? Open up that conversation and then do the same kind of process. They give you an answer and you start asking questions based off those answers. And then once you see certain trends or you have those kind of like aha moments, those are again like little pieces, right? And then maybe you even
Mhm.
expand off of that and you say, like, okay, well, tell me about your upbringing around money. What was that like? Was it plentiful or was it scarce? How did your parents behave with money? What was the dynamic between your parents with money? What were your friends' situations like? Like all those sorts of things and much more. You can dig as much as
Mhm.
you want, but oftentimes, like if you can get kind of like an all-encompassing kind of like layout of how money has actually affected them throughout their life and how they view money and what they've experienced or observed, then that oftentimes gives you answers and clarity on some of the mindset shifts or even behavioral shifts that would benefit them to actually rise above that spending addiction or that one thing that's holding them back kind of thing.
Mhm.
And once you
Yep.
figure that out, you're off to the races kind of thing.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. I think that we should actually do an entire episode on that, on helping people identify their relationship with money. What the heck does that even mean for people? Like they're like, "What? So what do you mean a relationship with money? It's this inanimate object." But what that really means and how to identify that and kind of pair that with the idea of the money scripts, because we brought that up a little bit too. Like, what was your upbringing and what sorts of things did you hear around money? I think you mentioned earlier about that they didn't want $1 million because that they think excuse me, rich people are evil. So I think that that's actually something that it would be a really good piece to this whole transformational coaching thing. Too much to dig into today, but I really think that that's something that our listeners would benefit from, Cody, because there is just so much with transformational coaching that is so it takes longer.
Yeah.
That's
And
one
and
thing.
it's kind of
It
it's kind of money in a sense that like it's hard to explain, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
until you
Mhm.
actually do it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Um, but yeah, it does take a lot longer. It's a skill that you have to have a lot of reps with, and it's
Mhm.
also, in my opinion, a perishable skill as well. Meaning that if you
Mhm.
don't use it, you'll lose it, kind of thing.
Mhm.
You know.
Mhm.
So yeah, I agree.
Okay. Well, we'll table that one for another time as well. But I mean, this is some really solid gold stuff. The reality is budget coaching isn't easy, just so you guys know. Like, we don't want to make it sound like transformational coaching is so skilled and budget coaching is not, because that's not true either.
Yeah.
Even if you just feel comfortable and desire to stay a budget coach, if you will, that's going to take some skill as well, because again, you don't want to just fall into the trap of using your own processes as the go-to processes all the time. You still are going to have to be able to ask the right questions, listen to what your client is needing, and then be able to help them create their own processes that we're gonna their systems to do what they're going to do. So it's not a skillless job, just so you know. We do recognize that, but we just know that once you've kind of gotten your feet wet with that a little bit, you are going to discover this. And I can tell you that we have coaches who are in our coaches meetup in our community that have come to us and said, I'm recognizing that my clients need more. They're actually coming to me for more. And what they're recognizing or realizing is that in their consultations, depending on how they do these consultations, if they present themselves as more of that just I'm using air quotes for those of you who aren't seeing this right now, as the budget coach, they're closing fewer
Yes.
of the
Yes.
consultations, because people really are looking for more of that transformational, but they don't know that that's what they're after. All they know is that they see either their debt numbers go up, their savings numbers go down, or they're spending just out of control, and they're like, I need help with this. And so they go to a financial coach. So that's why we're doing this today, because we know that both of these things are very valuable, but we also know that this is a good step up for those of you who are interested in that. So we know that also this is not easy. So if you need some help with that, that's one of the things that we're here for, is to help you just practice. Like Cody said, it's a skill and it's one that will die if you don't use it. So we want to make sure that people are able to have a space where they can practice through some of these things as well.
Yeah.
So,
I'll say one more thing and then I think we'll wrap it up for today. But the thing that you mentioned about how the coaches in the meetup have said that they've noticed that when they have like the budget coach approach, they're closing less than as
hmm
compared to the transformational approach. I,
hmm
for all the reasons that you said, I completely agree. I also think that there's another layer to that, in the sense that there's so many people who just focus on the numbers. And in fact, there's an entire industry being financial advisors who really
hmm
just do that. And then you
hmm
have the financial coaching industry where maybe it's 50% of them that also do that. So
yeah.
with you being that different type of coach with that different type of approach, all of a sudden you separate yourself from everybody else. And people go, "Oh, this is new. This is
Yeah.
interesting. This isn't just another run of the mill bean counter. Like
hmm
I'm feeling something here, you know?" And that's
hmm
oftentimes probably why that close rate is a little bit higher. It's because it's what they're actually looking for, because they've talked to other people before and it's been all the same stuff, you know?
hmm
And it's a
Yeah.
breath of
Good
fresh
point.
air.
Yeah, very good point. And I know a lot of financial advisors do some of the budgeting stuff. I'm assuming those are the ones you're talking about. Some of them really are just looking at plugging in numbers to tell you how much you got to give
Right.
to them by a certain
Right.
amount of time. So you have this amount. But there are some who go a little bit deeper and do try to help provide spreadsheets and budgets and that kind of thing. But you're right. It's just the surface level. And if they can get that for free, why would they pay somebody else to do that for them? So yeah, this is a really good reason to feel comfortable charging for your services, because you're actually going to help them transform.
Right.
Great topic. Thank
Yeah.
you.
No problem. No problem.
Fun time.
So thank you guys for hanging out, having some fun with us. It sounds like we already know what we're going to be talking about next, which is,
Oh,
helping
okay.
you, potentially jump into that whole relationship with money world. So if you enjoyed this episode, if you're starting to get some gears turning in your head, again, I would encourage you to go back and listen to the last week, because they go hand in hand. And I would also encourage you to check it out next week as well, because that will also kind of build off of this as well. So as always, we appreciate you guys. If you feel up to it, leave a review, share the show, leave a rating, whatever you want to do. That does help us out a lot. And of course, you can find us in our Facebook group as well, the Financial Coaches Community by New Money Habits. So we'll catch you guys there, and we'll see you guys next week. Thanks, guys.
Thank you for listening to the Financial Coaches Podcast, brought to you by New Money Habits and Sizemore Financial Coaching. Submit your questions to our hosts by emailing podcast@newmoneyhabits.com. Be sure to subscribe to be notified of future episodes and join our growing group of like-minded coaches on Facebook. And until next time, happy coaching.